Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make some hang tags. I mentioned in my last video that I needed to get some made up for fall. So what I decided to do was just go ahead and make some that would work well for fall, but I could also use now because I need the first ones to be more versatile, I think. So I wanted to add scripture to most of these because I've gotten down to where I don't have a whole lot of tags with scripture. And so what I did was I just took some of my scripture stamps, and I have a lot of people ask where I find them. I get many of them on Amazon and many of them from Hobby Lobby, and then I've even thrifted a few. So here I'm making some resin molds because I want to put some little birds on some of these. So this is a little set that I found on Amazon, and I'll link that in the description. But they're just tiny little birds, and they work so well for adding to hang tags. Now, if you've never used resin, you just mix one part of part A and one part of part B. And I use the amazing resin that I get from either Hobby Lobby or on Amazon. You just stir it up until it becomes clear, and then you pour it in the mold, and it'll set up within 10 minutes. Now, this is a pack of paper that I got at the Dollar Tree, and they always have these in. It's just all different colors and thicknesses, and many of these papers in here, and this is one that looks like a homemade paper. And so I feel like this is a great value because I love getting them. It's almost like a grab bag. You just don't know what all's in there until you open it up. And you know, there's some of them that you can't really use much, but most of them are good, and many of them are just really good. And it's just awesome to see how many different homemade papers are in there. Now, with many of my hang tags, I like to take my scissors and rough up the edges, and then I like to go over it with some antiquing ink, and I just feel like that adds a lot to it. If you just use the antiquing ink without this, it would work fine, but I just like the extra texture that roughing them up causes, and then that antiquing ink also grabs more to that. Now, I think this paper here is perfect for the little birds because it looks very like there's little pieces of nature in it almost. It's just a really pretty paper. And it's thicker than cardstock, this particular one is, and impossible to tear. So you have to cut it and then just rough it up if you want torn edges. So I like to take either some plain copy paper or some old book pages that don't have any print on them, and just take all my stamps out and just stamp a bunch at one time, and then I tear them out and go ahead and antique around them, and then you'll have them ready when you want to add scripture to your hang tags. Now, because there's just a little bit of brown in this paper, then I felt like this little piece of paper needed a brown frame around it. So what I did was I went ahead and glued it to another piece of that paper that's in there. And this again is, you can tear it, but this one is tearable, but it's really hard to tear. But I just kind of tore a little border out around this. Now, if my voiceover sounds different, it's because I just didn't have the opportunity to do my voiceover because people were around. So I went out on my back porch, and so you're going to hear some sounds of nature, which is perfect for this particular one because this is has a lot of nature in it. And but you're going to hear some sounds of nature, but sadly you're probably going to hear some cars as well. Now, I just went out in the backyard and picked up some twigs, and some of them I wanted straight, some of them I wanted a little Y, so that I would have almost like a little perch for the bird, like this one. So I just kind of broke it the size that it needed to be, and now I'm just going to take some hot glue and glue that in place. Now, you could use a tacky glue or any kind of glue you want, I guess, other than just regular school glue. I don't think that would hold it very well. but I just kind of glue that in place. I hope you guys are getting pretty weather where you are. My weather here this week, although it's been very hot, has just been beautiful. So this is a nice day to get on the back porch and do this voiceover, except that I do have to have my fan going because it is so hot. So these that you see here to the side are those little resin birds that I poured. And obviously they're going to dry white. And I just took some bronze gilding wax and went over them completely with a little brush. And I just wanted them to be darker. And then I can add either white wax to the ones that I want to bring out more of the detail, or I can even take a little artist brush and kind of dry brush a cream color over the top of them to highlight the texture. But I wanted this darker, more natural color underneath. Even though this is bronze, it's still a good dark color to bring out that detail. So I needed some pattern on the top part of this. So what I did was I just tore a little piece of a music sheet and antiqued around the edges, and then I'm going to glue that down before I add my bird, just so there'll be some more interest there. And I thought that music was appropriate since it is a bird, and the scripture is also appropriate for this bird. Now, a lot of the hang tags that I've done today, and I haven't gotten any in the mail for this one, but a lot of them that I've done today I didn't get to videotape, so I'm going to be showing those at the end too. So if you think you might have missed that particular one, you didn't. It's just that I didn't get to film it. Now this little mold that I poured this resin in also has some little leaves with a little bit of a flower. I did those the same way that I did the birds, and again I can highlight those or white wax them if I need to. Now the hang tags that I put things from nature in are probably my very favorite, especially if they have some scripture on them. And I've been feeling like I need more scripture in my store. I always keep some, but I've kind of laid down on the job and I really feel like I need more, so that's why most of these hang tags are going to have some scripture on them. I think the scripture is very appropriate for these since there is nature on them. I was reading Psalm 104 this morning, and I was really thinking hard about all of God's creation. And we think about the little things that He created, or actually the big things that He created, but we don't think about all the little details of each creation and how He perfectly provided for every one of us before He even created us. It's just amazing to me. So I think anytime we can make others think a little bit more about Him, it's only a good thing. So I added just a little bit of script stamping to this because I felt like it was a little bit, it needed a little bit of something behind that. So anytime that I feel like that, a lot of times I'll just get out some small script stamp and just kind of lightly stamp it. So I'm going to wait and show the finished tags when I'm finished with all these. Now this is some more of the paper that came from the Dollar Tree. And again, it is a very good value. So if you haven't seen it there or haven't purchased it there, you might want to try a pack and just see. I think that you'll find yourself getting it more. And I don't like the glitter ones. Some of you may like those, but there's usually just maybe a couple of the glitter ones in there. And I don't like the brighter colors, but again, some of you may like the brighter colors. But this is a good fall color here without limiting it to fall, because I'm not going to be putting any fall pictures on here. But again, I'm just roughing up those edges, and then I'll take my antique ink and go around all the edges. And then I'm taking just a little piece of tulle, and I'm going to take my scissors and kind of rough the edges up of it, because I just kind of cut it out into an odd shape, and then I'll just kind of pull at the edges a little bit with my scissors so that it'll kind of pucker that up and texturize the outer edge. And I just layer a couple of layers of this back behind it so that it has enough to give it more texture. And then I'm just hot gluing that on. I generally don't glue paper on with hot glue unless I'm putting some texture under it, and I don't mind the lift that you're going to get with the hot glue. And again, I'm going to add a little bird and twig to this one and make it more of a rustic looking tag. And now I'm gluing some little leaves that I tore from a pick and adding just a few of those onto the tree. And then I'll just take, I'll dry brush some of the color buttercream on the bird to bring out some of that detail. And adding that little bit of highlight makes a really big difference on the bird. It really just makes it stand out a lot more and not look like it's part of that little makeshift tree. I wish they made a mold for these little birds that was just a whole bunch of these little birds, because you have to pour, you can only pour just, I think there's just a few on this, and then you have to wait on that and then go back and pour more, and it doesn't take very much at all. So it would really be good if there was a mold for a whole lot of these. So I think the best idea in pouring these is just no matter what you're pouring, just keep that little mold handy so that you can pour a few of those and then pour what you're going to pour, because you don't want to save these for last, because once the resin gets thick at all, then you can't pour into these little bitty molds. So here I am roughing up those edges again, and sometimes I really rough them, and again, this is just a personal preference. You may like the clean, crisp look, but this is just a cardstock that's actually printed on both sides. So I really like these for hang tags, because then your back definitely doesn't need anything. Now you could do a little nature scene with a bird on the front of these, and if you wanted to dress up the back still, then you could just take a little bird stamp and just stamp a bird on the back, and that would be plenty. What I want here is a corner nest, so I'm adding a little bit of texture and lift with this little piece of vintage lace, and I'm kind of creating a pocket. As you can see there, I just glued and just kind of pinched it down to where it was kind of shaped like a pocket. And now I'm just going to glue a little bit of this Spanish moss in it and just kind of keep pressing it until I get some sort of a shape there that wants to hold. Now make sure that I glue it on both sides so that it stays secure. And then that little bit creates the illusion of a nest. And then I mentioned before that a very smart viewer told me to use Great Northern beans, and when I needed little bitty eggs. So obviously these eggs are still way too large for these little tiny birds to lay. But again, we're just going for illusion here. And if we went as small as those birds need their eggs to be, then you wouldn't even see them. So now I'm just kind of spritzing some, or flicking, I guess, some brown paint on these eggs to make them look more realistic. I didn't do that last time that I used these, and because they have just a little bit of, they have that bean shape, and because of that, I wanted to kind of distract from that and make it look even more like eggs. So I just kind of sprinkled that on there and let it dry, and I'm going to put a few of these little eggs in the nest. And if you stick some of them kind of down in there, then that also distracts from the bean shape. And once they're done, you don't notice those are beans at all. That was a great tip. And then with this tag, I'm just going to take a stick that I've gotten from the yard, just a straight stick, and glue it across the top. Now what I should have done was punched my hole first, so you have to kind of get creative in punching your hole when you do this first. And you'd think that I would learn with this one, but I didn't. I did this with at least one more of them, and ended up having to kind of work around that stick to punch my hole. So obviously this one's going to get some more scripture on it. And I just found one of these that would fit. And I think all of them are appropriate for this. So just whichever one fit best, that's the one I glued on. And since this is paper to paper, I just use regular school glue to glue this on. I see a lot of the crafters do their videos and use little sticks or little paint brushes to rub their glue on, which is a great idea. But me being my haphazard self, I just did it with my finger. This one I went from the side and was able to reach that center, and it didn't hurt me that stick was on there. No, I said that I reached the center, but this was the one where I didn't reach the center, so my hole was off center, which bothered me. So what I did to remedy that is just build some texture off the short side of this, and then it distracted from that hole being not in the center. So again, I could have remedied this completely by punching my hole before I added that stick, but that would take some forethought, and I don't always do that. But I do kind of like that texture coming off the side anyway, so it worked out in the end. So after I added that lace, I even added another kind of wispy cloth back behind it to add some more texture there. And sometimes it's those little touches that you have to do because you did mess up that end up adding a lot of character to your piece that you didn't plan on, and improves your tag anyway. Or maybe that's something that we crafters say to make ourselves feel better. But I do like the texture on this one. But I do really like how this one turned out. And it kind of is nice having that texture to the top right when you have all the texture from on the bottom left. So now I'm going to show you on this paper. This is one of those from the Dollar Tree. You really can't tear it. It's just such good paper. So it is perfect for hang tags. And I know a lot of times I have the problem when I punch my hole in the top and then I go to thread some ribbon through it or something and pull it tight, I'll pull that hole all the way through. Well, that's not going to happen on this one because this is good sturdy paper. And I can really, really rough up these edges and make it look nice. I wish that I had more of this. And I told my sister, I actually bought a couple packs of this, and I'm just going to go back and buy several more because it sure can't hurt having it, and it's very cheap. So then you'll always have some good cardstock when you want to make an extra special tag. Now here, to make this look a little more like a tag, I just cut those corners off the top. I'm going to rough them up anyway, so you don't have to worry about perfection here. Some people will use a stencil to do this, or a template rather to do this, but I don't mind my hang tags not being perfect. And adding that antiquing around this one with that little touch of brown in the center is just, on the paper itself, just really pulls this tag together. And I always make sure that I antique on both sides, even though I'm not going to be doing really anything to the back. It just has so much nicer look on the back. Now this one is not going to be as rustic. I want to add a little bit of frill to this one, so it has a natural look, but it's also going to have some frill. So Tammy and I today were thinking about fall and even Christmas, and I know that a lot of you are thinking, oh no, not Christmas this early. But if you have a booth or a store, then you know that you have to think about that early. And so what we're doing is putting some little gift sets together, and so that we'll have plenty. I almost always do a Christmas open house in my store, And for the last 2 years, with all the COVID thing, we just chose not to do it. Well, actually, we chose not to do it year before last because of the COVID thing, and then last year Mom had passed, and we just chose not to do it. We just really didn't have time, and COVID wasn't a good time for it. So we're going to start that back this year, and we need plenty of gift items ready to go. So we've been kind of prepping some things today, and I may at some point do a video on putting some things together for that, but I am a little ways off from doing Christmas videos, so don't worry about that. I will be doing fall pretty soon, though. Now, I thought about speeding this one up, but I decided I just want to show you at regular speed some of these hang tags, because I know that some of you don't want to see the same thing over and over and things that you know, but there's a lot of people who don't know how to do these tags and are just getting started with them. So I wanted to take the time and show you guys how I do it. Now, I'm not showing all my thought process. I am clipping some of that out, but I did want to show you at regular speed how to do these. Now, because I like that extra texture in the corner of that last one that I did, I went ahead and added some texture there, even though I didn't need it. And then that little mold that I glued on there is just part of that little bird mold. It had some leaves and flowers, so I glued that on there. I had also bronzed it. But what I did with this one is I just took my finger and added some gold gilding wax over the top of that to highlight it. And then I added some gold gilding all the way around, or on 3 sides of the tag that didn't have the lace on it. And that just kind of brought it all together. And I went over some of the buttons even with just a little bit of that gilding wax. And that just kind of pulled it all together to have that gold gilding on there. And especially pulled it together when I went around those edges. I'm definitely not a fan of gold, but I like that when there's just little subtle touches. I just really like that look. And now on this next tag, I'm using another piece of cardstock that's printed on both sides. And then I've already roughed up the edges and already antiqued around the edges. And now I'm using some of this netted ribbon I guess it's ribbon, from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to build that little kind of almost like a little pocket area here with it instead of the lace for my nest. I started to glue that in the wrong corner and realized that was the wrong corner, and my printing was up or sideways, and so, or my tree, actually there's a little tree in the center of this one, so I thought it would kind of go well with the nest. So as you can see, I just kind of push it down there. That way it will hold that Spanish moss. And then I put just a little touch of Spanish moss in it and make sure that I glue it in securely. These little tiny nests like this, especially in a corner, are very, very easy, as you can see, to make. And again, I'm not speeding this up. I'm just doing it. This is how long it takes to put a little nest together. And you're actually just kind of pinching it to secure it and shape it. And I get a lot of questions about my hot glue, how I don't burn my fingers. I don't know, maybe my fingers are so used to it that I don't really burn as easily, but I think the biggest thing is I'm using a low temp glue gun, and I have the little Ryobi glue gun that is battery operated and very handy to have, but I always burn myself, so I just use the little cheap glue guns that are low temp. And I almost never burn myself. As you can see, I glue it and then touch it almost immediately, and I just almost never burn myself. So I know my granddaughter can use a glue gun that is low temp and still burn herself. So maybe some of you just your fingers are not quite as tough as mine have gotten over the years, and you will burn, but for me it just works out like this. And I used a little bit of cheesecloth that I had coffee stained and kind of added some more texture underneath that nest, and now I'm gluing another one of those sticks. And again, this is another instance where I didn't punch my hole first. And I think with this one, the stick was thin enough that I was able to go over it with my hole punch and still get my hole in the center. And now I'm layering a couple of layers of this netted ribbon that I get from the Dollar Tree. Again, if you haven't tried this, it's a really good value because I only use very small pieces of it, so it goes a really long way. And it goes a long way in adding texture and interest to your tags. And now I'm going to add some, I added 2 layers here because I felt like it needed more texture. So then I'm going to add these little pip berries to the side, just so that it has just a little bit of something that looks alive on here, I guess. And but I wanted something that would stand out, so I felt like I needed those light colored berries. As you can see, these hang tags just come together. You can just kind of design them as you go and just take your time. Whatever looks good to you is going to look good to somebody else. So don't overthink them. Just do what you think looks good. And then once I got these on here, I felt like it needed a little bit more softness in that. So I just took some little piece of flowers and glued some little white flowers on there. And just that little bit really softens that up. And this is all keeping with the brown and white color scheme, so I think that also adds a lot to your tag. It makes it look more thought out. And then, of course, this little tag, although I think it's very cute like it is, it has just the perfect little place to add one of my little birds. So I'm going to glue one of those little birds that I've already highlighted right in the side of that nest. And this one may be my favorite. And then to thread through this to string it, I'm just going to use a little ripped strip of coffee stained tea towel, and that will finish this off and add some more of that white to the top, and that will kind of make that little stick stand out also. So if you think you don't have materials for hang tags, just go outside a little while and I'm sure you'll find plenty. So now I'm going to take the next tag in a different direction. I had some cardstock that was has more color on it, so I'm going to add some texture with this by adding some of the mesh or tulle ribbon that you get at the Dollar Tree. It has these little specks in it, and add some texture that way because this just happened to be the right color that I needed. So I bunched that tulle up there because I wanted to put a little makeshift bouquet of flowers in it. So I needed some lift there so that this would look like an actual bouquet. So I just put some little twigs together and glued them together in the center and tied a little string around them. It's a little bit hard to work with a little tiny bouquet like this, so I definitely struggled a little bit. I'm not used to doing this on tags, and then I just glued that over the top of that tulle, and it looked like a little miniature bouquet. And I'm going to add just all kinds of texture on this one just by adding some little extra flowers and some bits of lace. And then obviously this one is going to get scripture also. And I know that I started with a lot of color on this one, but I end up covering so much of it up that the color in the background just ends up being more of an accent color. And I really like the look that I get from that. So, even though I generally shy away from a lot of color for these hang tag bases, you can still make them work when you're adding a lot to them. Now, although I use these hang tags for pricing, and a lot of people ask what I use them for, I use them for pricing primarily. And what I do is I put just a little sticker on the back of them with the price on it. That way, if they want to save the tag, they can just take that little sticker off. Or if they want to gift their item, then it makes it more giftable. And again, they can just peel that sticker off the back. So that's primarily what I make the tags for. But I have lots of people who just save the tags and even buy the item for the tag sometimes. So just the little ways that you present things can make all the difference in the world in whether or not they sell, especially around the holidays when people are looking for gifts. So I'm sure that the hang tags seem like a waste of time to some people, but they're definitely not a waste of time for me. So, and I enjoy making them. They're really fun to make. And if you're new to my channel, I have a wall that I display tags that the viewers have sent in, and that's just something that doesn't take much postage, and you can mail it in if you have a hang tag that you're proud of, and I will show it at the end of my video, and then I display it on that wall. And I'm getting really close to covering that wall, so I'm going to show you guys in the next little bit how the wall is looking. But once that wall gets completely full, it should be nearing Christmas time, nearing the time for me to put a Christmas tree up. So in one of the trees in the shop, I'm going to decorate it, I think, with hang tags, the viewers' hang tags. So that'll be fun to see how that tree turns out. And then I'll just put my tags back and save them for the tree the next year. And then if you guys want to continue to send hang tags in, I'll start another wall. Or I'll actually start over with that wall, showing more hang tags. So it could be something that we continue to do if that's what y'all want to do. Or if you can think of another thing that you would like to do that would be easy to mail, then I'm definitely up for any ideas you have. And I haven't put my address in the description in a while, so I'm going to go ahead at the end of this video, since it is a hang tag video, and put my address down again so that you'll know where to mail your hang tags to. And if you'll just either write me a little note and let me know how you want your name said. Some people are funny about having their full name mentioned. So if you don't want your full name, I can use your first name or whatever you guys want. I'm happy to say your full name, and I will show your tag in detail. And it's just a fun way for you guys to share what you do, because the hang tags give us opportunities to show different techniques that we've learned. As you can see here, I'm covering up a lot of this color, but there's still enough color coming through that it ends up being a really pretty accent. And this little doily, or partial doily, that I glued on here has that hole right in the center. So I made sure that when I placed that I placed that hole right over my hole that I had punched in my cardstock. And that will help sturdy that hole up and just give it a better look also. And this is just a vintage looks like a vintage lace ribbon, but this is actually not a vintage ribbon. Actually, what I did was I took a curtain shear and I ripped it into strips, just an off-white curtain shear. You could use white also. And then I put some water in a bowl and added just some chalk paint in the color that I wanted my ribbon, and just kind of stirred it around until I made sure that there was no paint that wasn't mixed in good. And then I just dipped my shear in it, and if it needed to be darker, I added a little bit more, took it out, added a little bit more paint. And this is just a really good way to dye your fabrics that you're not going to be washing at any point. But then I just laid it outside in the sun to dry, and it just really made this sheer look like old ribbon. As you can see, I just keep adding texture on this one because I just really like the look that I was getting, adding all that texture. And now, because I have that little empty spot there on the bottom left that I'm not happy with, then I just took a little scrap of lace, a couple of little scraps of lace actually, and just kind of glued them and pinched it to where there would be just a little bit of texture, and added some texture there and glued a button on, and then this tag was finished. And I really like the look of this tag. And now I'm just going to play a little music while I show you guys through all the hang tags. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.